It's time for the best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Indeed, and good to have you with us on this Monday edition of the show. Lots to do over the next 60 minutes, as there is every day. We'll be joined by Dennis Bernstein of the fourthperiod.com, also SiriusXM NHL Radio. I have a question to ask him, so we're going to flush it out after the latest edition of the Stadium Series in the NHL, which was a instant classic over the weekend at the home of the Ohio State Buckeyes. So we will get into that with him. Our friend Tino Pattigno drops by, our wraparound NASCAR segment, Fridays and Mondays with him, to talk about the road race at COTA and another win for Christopher Bell. So we'll talk about that as well. Whole bunch of stuff to get to in this show, including something we rarely talk about on the show, and that is wrestling, because there was a heel turn this weekend for the ages that we got to get to as well. But Sammy Arnell is here. Do you play NASCAR games on like your PS or your Xbox or whatever you kids play today?
Of course I do. I'm still racing at COTA. If you couldn't tell, we're making the lefts and the rights this week.
Okay. Like you're having
great race.
You look like you're having a seizure.
All right. Great race this week at the Circuit of the Americas, right? And we always get one when they open that the road course season in NASCAR. It always makes it a little more interesting than just turning left. So I was locked in and a great ending, and it made it better than what we saw in the golf this weekend, Jason. But it was a good weekend full of sports and a huge trade in the NFL.
Huge trade in the NFL. Deebo Samuel on his way out of the Bay Area with the 49ers. He will go and play now for the Washington Commanders. The shocking part of this, Sam, is the 5th round pick. That was all the Niners were able to extract for somebody with the talent of Deebo Samuel to only get a 5th round pick out of the Commanders. And if you're the Commanders, I mean, you got to feel like you hit the jackpot here. Now, look, obviously we know what this team needs to improve upon is defense. But to be able to acquire a player the caliber of Deebo Samuel for simply a 5th round pick, which is going to be an extremely hit or miss pick for the Niners, which they better hit on now because everybody's going to look at that 5th round pick and say, this is what you got for Deebo Samuel. A great day if you're a Commanders fan.
It is. I will defend the Niners here for a second before I go on my spiel about how amazing the Washington Commanders are. Listen, a 5th round pick is about all you're going to get for Deebo. And what they're really fortunate about in this whole ordeal that I do think is going underreported is that Washington is taking on all of Deebo's money, right? So immediately off the books for San Francisco. And that is objectively a good thing when you're talking about an offseason where you have to pay Brock Purdy, right? You don't have to worry about any dead cap with Deebo Samuel. You don't have to worry about any of that. Adam Peters and the Washington Commanders are dealing with it. And now to the Adam Peters and the Washington Commanders side of this. Wow, what a great deal. Listen, in my mind, the Washington Commanders now should be the favorite to win the NFC East, barring the Philadelphia Eagles signing Myles Garrett. And if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles, I'm looking down I-95 at my companions inside the Beltway, and I'm saying, all right, we got to get on the phone with Myles Garrett like tomorrow. Because if we lose as many pieces as we're slated to on that Philadelphia Eagles defense and what the Commanders are showing, the prowess they have this offseason and the ability they have, I'm getting nervous in Philadelphia. The Commanders are here, and Jason, they're here to stay.
One thing I will fact check you on. I'll do the Freddie fact checker thing here. San Francisco does have a $31 million dead money hit on this year's salary cap. So that I mean they do take a hit as far as this year
but they're not actively paying Deebo Samuel.
No, I get it, but I'm just saying there is a $31 million dead cap hit, $17.5 million on Washington's cap, and obviously I would look for them to extend Deebo Samuel. Who wouldn't be excited to play with Jaden Daniels? Look, I mean, we all knew at some point that he was going to go somewhere. They sent him as far away as possible, basically, from the Bay Area. But what a coup for the Commanders. And I agree, if you're in that division, and you're the Cowboys and you're talking about, hey, what can the Cowboys do this year? And all of a sudden you just look, and already the first shots fired across the bow are from this Washington Commanders team. You certainly have to feel good if you're a Commanders fan. Can I just get to a thought on the Combine? So I went to go, as you can see, I got a new haircut. Well, I mean, not new haircut, but same haircut, just, yeah. So I got a haircut this weekend. I was sitting at Sports Clips, where I always go and get my hair cut, and they had the Combine on. And it was fun watching offensive linemen who were just huffing and puffing, running the 40. By the way, I once ran the 40 in 5.97. That was 15 years ago. That was the best I could do. Sorry. But we were under 6, so that's not completely embarrassing. But I watched this weekend, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, and it brought me back to something Jason Cole said to us recently on the show, Hall of Fame selector, NFL writer. It's covered the league for a long time. Something he said to me about this really just being a show for the fans. Because I'm sitting there watching these guys run, and we're analyzing a guy who runs, a 4.98, oh my God, and then the next one's a 4.90, and oh my goodness. And I'm sitting there going to myself, don't we have enough film on these guys? Haven't we seen enough, if you're an NFL team, that we got to march these guys out, put them in tight, spandex out there on the field, and watch them do the same things they do in games which actually matter, as opposed to, not being in uniform and all that stuff. I don't get the Combine. It's never excited me. I've had more than enough of my fill of the college football season to know what Shedeur Sanders is, to know what Cam Ward is, to know what Ashton Genty is, to know what some of these running backs and offensive tackles and all this stuff is. I don't need it, Sam.
Well, yeah, and then Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward go to the Combine and they don't throw the football. Yeah. Listen, I agree with you. It is the NFL's main way to stay relevant during this part of the offseason, right? The downtime between the Super Bowl and the draft. And the NFL's always got to be in the sports news cycle. So this is how they do that. I think we've gotten to a point where nobody does anything anymore. To me, the Combine more so is representative of the meetings that happen, and that's just as somebody who looks at sports maybe more objectively than fans tend to. Because look at what you saw, right? The Deebo Samuel trade came out of a Combine meeting. We had the whole tiff between Rappaport and Jordan Schultz, and that came from the Combine and news breaking out of the Combine. And what it's the most important for, Jason, is the players meeting with the teams, not the physical abilities.
No, it isn't. And even some of that stuff with the mental tests that they put guys through. Give me a break. All right. I've got something to say about Pete Rose, Rob Manfred, and the hypocrisy of Major League Baseball, and I'll say it next. We welcome you back to this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. Coming up in 10 minutes, Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. I got a bone to pick with him. Not with him, but with the NHL. Stadium Series, Blue Jackets, Red Wings played a classic. Talk about that coming up in a couple of minutes. Yes, Sam Yarnell, what? You're waving your finger before we even get into
the coolest thing by far to me, a nerd, about that whole Stadium Series went so unnoticed. Every time the Blue Jackets scored a goal, they rolled out a cannon behind the Blue Jackets goal. So by the end of it, there were what I think the final score was 6-4 or 4-3 or something. There were however many goals the Blue Jackets had, and I think they were doing the same thing for the other team too, but I don't have confirmation of that. Yeah. Regardless, very cool. It was like a college football thing at a hockey game.
Well, I got a real big question I want to ask of Dennis Bernstein when it comes to that Stadium Series. We'll do that coming up in a couple of minutes. All right, I got a couple of minutes. I need you to indulge me, Sam Yarnell, because I got a bone to pick here.
You pick that bone, you pick it clean.
Well, look, when Pete Rose died, I gave a very impassioned speech, I guess you could say, or a monologue about the fact that he never did get his day in the Hall of Fame. And look, Pete Rose lied to my face. I did a 30-minute interview with Pete Rose back in, 2014, 2015. He had a book that came out, and he lied to my face about his betting on baseball. And then months later, a year or so later, it came out that he did bet on baseball and who he bet on and all of this stuff. We had Tom Brenneman on when Pete Rose passed away, and Tom Brenneman said, and I said to Tom Brenneman, if you're Rob Manfred, there's one thing you better dare not do, and that is put this man in the Hall of Fame after he passes away. Because to me, that's the ultimate kick in the groin. That's the ultimate insult for a guy that all he wanted before he died was to go in the Hall of Fame. The guy went up there and signed baseballs every year around the Hall of Fame induction ceremonies just because he wanted that so badly. And baseball knew it, and they never gave it to him. And now comes the story, last week, first of all, of Rob Manfred, of President Trump pardoning Pete Rose for his tax evasion crimes. And then the news came out of Rob Manfred saying that he is considering reinstatement for Pete Rose at the behest of his family, at the behest of his attorney or whatever, that they're looking at the possibility of reinstating Pete Rose, which would then make him eligible for the Hall of Fame. And then you'd still need to get the votes to get into the Hall of Fame, which is, I don't know if that's a foregone conclusion when you consider some of the people that vote for this thing and the fact that there are people out there that didn't think Derek Jeter were a Hall of Famer. What are they going to do with Pete Rose? Another topic entirely, which we may actually get to because Rob Manfred is considering reinstating Pete Rose. And to me, it is the truest sense of the word, the yellow, the cowardice of Rob Manfred to do this now. The hard decision, the tough decision would have been doing this when Pete Rose were still alive. The hard decision would have been giving him an opportunity. And by the way, there's been multiple iterations of commissioners in Major League Baseball that have had the opportunity to do the right thing when it came to Pete Rose. Nobody said he should be managing again. Nobody said he should be, a third base coach for a team or have a daily role within a franchise. All we said was put the guy in the Hall of Fame. And now you're going to do it after he dies? When he doesn't have the opportunity to go there and have that moment, that 15, 20 minutes in front of a crowd and give his induction speech, he's not going to have that moment. Rob Manfred, you're a coward. You're a coward. You're the worst commissioner in my lifetime when it comes to Major League Baseball. The worst in my lifetime. And that's saying something when you consider Bud Selig oversaw the whole steroid era and the performance-enhancing drug era. Rob Manfred, you are the worst. And this will cement your place in history as the worst commissioner in my lifetime in Major League Baseball. Sam, I know you got something to say about it, and we will do that in just a moment after a word from our friends at Credit Associates. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high interest payments, high rates that keep you in debt for decades. And you can do it with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months, and that'll save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Find out how much you could save right now. Call 1-800-747-5362. 1-800-747-5362, or just scan the QR code below. And by the way, the other part of this, Sam, is the absolute hypocrisy with Major League Baseball. Because right now we're watching ABS, which I know is your favorite thing to talk about on the planet, the automatic ball strike system, which is literally geared towards being able to gamble on every pitch. That Major League Baseball has hopped into bed so willingly with the sports betting world and then done what they did to Pete Rose. I'm done with it. Go ahead.
That's a good point there. I agree with your point at the end. And I think there's, we'll do entire shows about this over the summer because I think there's so many different angles from which you could talk about this topic. Listen, I will take my time to say that I agree with you that Rob Manfred is 1 or 1B in terms of worst commissioner of all time, the other of whom the other position is occupied by, of course, the man who I talked about when Pete Rose died, Bart Giamatti, who again, on his deathbed, unknowingly, made Pete Rose agree to a lifetime ban and put him on the commissioner's exempt list that we're fighting over to this very day. Listen, Jason, my main thing about this is the the question for me that came up is now something that you kind of alluded to, right? If he's taken off the list and he's allowed to be in the Hall of Fame, what is the process, right? What, because it's unprecedented, right? Does he go to the ballot? He's way beyond term in terms of ballot eligibility. Does he go directly to the Veterans Committee? Who knows? That is the question to me, and I think that question will determine whether or not Pete Rose makes the Hall of Fame, because I think the Veterans Committee is one that's broad enough and open-minded enough that they could let him in, but I don't think the regular ballot will be one to let Pete Rose in the Hall of Fame where it currently stands with the voters we currently have.
I think you're right. I would be shocked if 75% of the voters put him in. I really would. Because there are a lot
of... But the Veterans Committee, I feel like, is wide open.
I agree. And I think there'd be a lot of lobbying and politicking
Totally.
for him to get in. But the Rob Manfred side of this, it makes me so angry. I was stewing about it all weekend. We're coming back. Dennis Bernstein joins us next. This Monday edition of Sports Wrap continues, and it's time to talk some hockey. I had fun watching the Stadium. I love the Stadium Series. It is one of the great things the NHL does, which is why I wanted to bring on Dennis Bernstein from the fourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio, who hangs out with us on the program. I got to ask you about this. And I have a feeling I know what your answer is going to be, but I don't want to predetermine it. So I'll ask you the question first. 94,000 people, I think, second largest crowd ever for a Stadium Series game at the Ohio State University and at their fine football stadium there. And we'll get to the controversy in that game as well. But I got to ask a question. Why not do more of these?
Well, there's two markets that haven't had an outdoor game. Miami, which is going to have the Winter Classic. They're going to play an outdoor game in Tampa. And then once that happened, it left Utah as the only team. And Ron Miller, the billionaire who's the hipster that just bought the team, saying, oh, that's in progress. So every team will have played in an outdoor game. Here's the thing. I asked Gary Bettman about it because here's my take. Kings, Golden Knights, home and home on a weekend, so fan Allegiant. You would sell 140,000 tickets, right? And to Gary's response, he likes the setting of an outdoor stadium. He doesn't like indoor stadiums. That's why you saw the Winter Classic, not at Jerry's World, but at the Cotton Bowl.
Right.
At some point in time, the revenues may be too great where somebody came to him and said, okay, we're going to get this. It gets put in the hockey-related revenue coffers. They might do it. But I've asked him on numerous occasions like that. So they just like, or he likes the concept of the Stadium Series being in an open-air stadium.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around why we don't see more of them every year, though. Why? I mean, what do we get? Five? What do we have? 4? 5 this year? What? How many did they do?
No,
this
not
year?
even.
3?
When they came back from the lockout, they did 6.
Okay.
And it was too much.
Really?
Right. Oh yeah, they had back-to-back. I did the game at Dodger Stadium. I left in the third period. I flew cross country. I did the game at Yankee Stadium between the Islanders and Rangers, and it was 17 degrees. It was one of the biggest regrets I've ever had because I left 72-degree weather here in Los Angeles. I just think, and plus, it's a big event to execute. That's the other thing, Jason. It's not like a WWE touring arenas. Like it's a big deal for them. So, and it's a lot of planning, and there's now bids for certain areas, and plus promises are made. So I think they've hit a critical mass because I think what you don't want to do is to overextend yourself, and then instead of 95,000 at the Horseshoe, you would have had 50,000. So I think they're being really, really careful putting this part of their brand.
I'm sure I've said this to you in the past, and I will continue to say it. And I know the reason they won't do it is because they don't have luxury suites at Yale Bowl. But Rangers Bruins at Yale Bowl. Yeah. Rangers Bruins at Yale Bowl would sell out that place.
Conceivably could. Yeah, it could. But, Ohio Stadium is 100 years old. It's an old facility. It's not a ton of suites there, so you could sell 90,000 tickets for that.
It would sell out in a heartbeat. It would be such a great spectacle. I just like these spectacles because it brings more eyeballs to the sport, and those fans hang on and say, "Hey, you know what? We're going to watch a couple more games," and that's how you build a following. And I'm always trying to figure out a way.
There's no question that they got lift from Four Nations at Stadium Series. Marty Walsh, who's the executive director, we did a pregame for SiriusXM. Marty Walsh told me that they probably sold around 65 to 70,000 before the Four Nations, and after that, they got a 20,000 boost in ticket sales from Four Nations till Saturday.
What's with the high stick not being called? I mean, how does that get missed?
Because it's the rule. It's the rule book. Unless it caused an injury, you can't review it. It's as simple as that.
Should that change? Should that change?
No, because then you're gonna have like you had it in the Warriors game the other day, where it was the last minute of the game when it was a 5-minute review to see if the guy his fingers touched him. No, I don't want to change it. There's too many. You don't want to be too many reviews because it screws up the flow of the game. And what I would advocate for, Jason, would be like a coach's challenge once a game, and they can review it.
Or how about inside of 2 minutes? How about inside of X number of minutes, like the NFL has? It's an automatic review.
Yeah, but then you're going to review 6 or 7 plays. I wouldn't do automatic because you could in that space, because hockey moves so fast.
Yeah.
In the space of 45 seconds, you might have to review 4 calls, and I don't want to do that as well. So maybe one coach's challenge on a high stick or a non-call or something like that. But you know what? The game is in such a great place. I've covered it for 30 years, since the turn of the century, and it's never been in a better place. I'm not really messing with like the 10-minute overtime. Well, that would be great, but 70% of the games come to a conclusion anyway. And you're going to tax guys like Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon, because those guys are going to be out there for the majority of the 5 minutes. So I don't want to tweak too much with the game. They always review stuff, the Board of Governors meetings, about some minor changes, maybe a little bit of salary cap. But in such a good place, Jason, nothing really comes to front of mind as saying, okay, this needs to be changed. And of course, it was on a big stage, a questionable call. That's part of the game.
Give me something on this Jack Hughes injury for the Devils. Look, they're precariously close to the, slipping back into that wild card spot. And depending on how long he's out, that might very well happen.
Yeah, they should be a playoff team. They're better than the 9th best team in the conference, but it really messes with them. They've been trouble scoring. You would think this team wouldn't have trouble scoring, but it is. The biggest beneficiary is the team that played on Saturday. It was a home team at Stadium Series. The Columbus Blue Jackets are coming, man. I think they're 4 points out of that spot. If I told you after the Johnny Gaudreau thing in August that we're 20 games away from the end of the regular season and the Columbus Blue Jackets have a shot at a home ice advantage in the first round, who would have said I was day drinking before I came on the game? So, yeah, it's a significant injury because Jack's a leader. He's a quiet leader. He's the top scorer. It would be a big blow. I still think they're good enough. Let's say he's out for the regular season down the stretch. Thinks they're still at the playoffs. It would severely damage the playoffs chances if he was be missing past game 82, Jason.
Who's impressed you most coming out of Four Nations?
John Cooper. Don't ever doubt his decision making. Everybody said, "What's he doing?" Hayden Hill should be playing in Four Nations, and all of a sudden, when they've won 8 straight, they might win the division. Everybody talked about Florida and the Maple Leafs winning the Atlantic. This team could win the division. Breeze Ball is a very aggressive GM in Tampa. They can make a move for another player. Watch out for this team, Jason. Very, very quietly. When people thought that maybe they get a wild card, they could win the Atlantic Division.
Dennis Bernstein, catch him on SiriusXM NHL Radio, also thefourthperiod.com. I always appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for coming on a Monday. We'll talk to you very soon.
It's Musial JP. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Lots more to do on this Monday Sports Wrap. Don't you go anywhere. Tino Pattigno talks NASCAR next. All right, coming up in 10 minutes, the heel turn of all time, John Cena at 2 Brute. We'll get into that coming up in a few minutes. Our wraparound NASCAR segment, Fridays and Mondays, we are joined by this guy, Tino Pattigno, SiriusXM NASCAR Radio. It's a SiriusXM Radio Day. We had Dennis Bernstein from SiriusXM NHL Radio, and now Tino Pattigno, who does a great job over at SiriusXM on NASCAR Radio. You can catch him on the weekends with his picks and his betting inside stuff, and he joins us on Fridays and Mondays here. All right, look, you said it last week, I think, after Christopher Bell won. You were like, could be the season of Christopher Bell, and there he goes. Winning in Atlanta was one thing, and then backing it up with a win, and really, taking it away from Kyle Busch late, kind of broke my heart. I was rooting for Kyle Busch, and we see Christopher Bell get another win. This one at Circuit of the Americas, impressive win in Austin.
It was very impressive. And look, everyone's been talking about it. I mentioned it to you as well on the shows. All throughout the season, I feel like we've talked about Larson, as we should, and all the other big names. And Christopher Bell has been up there as we continue to talk about races each week and talk about the season as a whole. It has been the year of Christopher Bell to start, and we're only 3 races in. Awesome to see. And like you said, Kyle Busch was there. He had his chance to get that win. He was doing everything he could. But I was amazed to see the respectful, clean racing had between not just 2 to 3 drivers, 4 drivers racing for the lead at the end of that road course race at COTA. You had Tyler Reddick up there, William Byron, Christopher Bell, and Kyle Busch all racing hard, but racing clean, like I said. And that was like, they put on a great show, and it made for some, exciting finishes and passes in between, the drivers. And I think the biggest thing too was like, it's been 60 races now after COTA that Kyle Busch has not won a race. His longest streak, obviously, in history. Everyone's talking about it.
How do you explain it? How do you explain the end of that race with him, where his car just seemed like he just ran out of car?
That's exactly it. He used up all of his stuff, and I think the biggest thing between Kyle Busch and the field
was the tires. The biggest thing there.
It was the tires, but also just the cars as a whole. Christopher Bell and William Byron and Tyler Reddick all just had better cars, handling wise. Maybe with Kyle Busch trying to get away from the field, he burned up some of his tires. Maybe Christopher Bell had a little bit of an advantage there. He did pit 1 lap later than Kyle Busch, I think, but it's the equipment as a whole. Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, even 2311, all better than RCR right now. It's the difference is Kyle Busch is able to put his car in that position to win, and when you're putting him up against those drivers on older tires, he just did all he could, and they showed him a lot of respect, which was nice. He was doing crazy blocks, sliding around, and the drivers know, okay, it's Kyle Busch, champion. Let's give him a chance here, and then capitalize when they had an opportunity to do so.
I'm not trying to be mean here, but if you're Shane Van Gisbergen and you are a road course specialist, and by the way, I was watching, I'm like, oh my, he might have a chance to win, and he didn't. And I'm sitting there saying, I almost don't want him to win, because I don't feel like, these ringers that are basically just road course guys, when there's only a few road course races every year, I don't feel like those guys should be granted an automatic spot in the playoffs if they win, because the rest of the year he's not doing anything.
Whoa. I understand the point, but I think he has taken improvements on the tracks that aren't road courses. And when you look at the season as a whole,
you wouldn't pick him to win anything this year outside of a road course race. Come on.
That's true.
And here's my bigger point. If you can't win this race, and not win, great, top 10, what did he finish, 6, 7, something like that. If you can't win this race, what race are you winning on the schedule?
He's winning the other road courses, I think. Limited experience in NASCAR still, right? It's his first full-time year in the Cup Series. You got to give him that. No one necessarily has really done what he is doing from this standpoint at his age, with his experience, with him being a proven champion in the Supercar Series coming over here. So I understand your point. You definitely want a better showing out of him. He did lead some laps, though. And I think I'm interested to see if he can take being a road course specialist and also improve on the oval tracks throughout the season. Yes, I'm not betting on him to win an oval race yet, but hey, maybe a couple years from now, he's a full, complete racer because of his time, in both series.
Friday, we talked about Bubba Wallace and stage points. And, and him and Joey Logano have piled up stage points here over the first few races of the season. And we saw him do it again. Now he was third in qualifying. He's up near the front of the pack to start the race. And as we kind of figured he would, he fell back to the pack and eventually kind of faded away. But it almost feels like there's a strategy here. And that is stock up those points, because, there's not going to be however many individual winners on the season. So there's going to be an opportunity there to get in via points. And it almost feels like there's a strategy going on here early on with Bubba Wallace, at least, to just rack up as many points. And even if we don't win a race, we'll still find our way into the playoffs.
Yeah, and their cars are fast enough to have that strategy as well, which is huge. We didn't expect him to be strong or fast at all on this road course, and he was. And the fact that he knew he wasn't going to be able to win the race, might as well, like you said, get those stage points, and that was key, right? Knowing you're going to be 5 to 6 spots away from even, having a chance at the lead. Okay, well, might as well win a stage, then have a chance to get high stage points in stage 2, and then you're leaving the day almost as good as if you won the race, because you weren't able to do so. And I think that's really big. For them to understand that early on in the season too, sets themselves up for success. You're really in a less pressure-packed situation come the end of the year.
I gotta go, Tino. We'll talk to you on Friday. All right, we keep it moving on this Monday edition of Sports Wrap. We rarely talk wrestling on the show. If we're talking wrestling on this show, something crazy happened. Like CM Punk coming back a couple of years back at, I think it was Survivor Series. Well, something crazy happened this weekend that broke the internet. If you did not see it, it is... look, the only heel turn that I could consider bigger than this one, Sam, and I know you're not as big of a wrestling guy, and I'm not a huge wrestling guy anymore. I just know enough because, again, I say it all the time, it sort of intermingles with our audience. There's a lot of parallel lines. It all kind of blends together. So I think I have an obligation to kind of know what's going on. That's my rationalization for turning on Peacock and watching a pay-per-view once in a while. So for people that didn't see it, this took place on Saturday at Sky Dome in Toronto, which has been the site of a lot of big WWE moments, by the way. Hulk Hogan losing to the Ultimate Warrior up there was obviously one of those. Hogan losing to The Rock up there. And it was the site of what people are calling, since Hulk Hogan joining the NWO, the biggest heel turn in the history of professional wrestling. And that is John Cena, who always vowed, even in this latest comeback, that he would never turn heel. John Cena turning heel on Cody Rhodes, who's the WWE champion. And boy,
the American Nightmare.
And the American Nightmare, yes. And joining forces with The Rock, and somehow Travis Scott is involved in this, and I have no real idea how Travis Scott is involved in this. But man, oh man, what a moment for professional wrestling. The moment where you see John Cena's face turn, there it is, after The Rock gives him the sign. And John Cena just kicks him in the groin and then proceeds to beat up on him for the next 7 or 8 minutes. Yeah, that was insane, Sam. And you're too young. I'm going to guess you're too young to remember Hulk Hogan's heel turn. But for people that don't know it, here's the heel turn from Hulk Hogan on the Macho Man Randy Savage when he joined the NWO back in the WCW days. But again, for it to even register on your radar, Sam, tells me how big it was.
100%. Obviously, you mentioned it, right? There has been a noticeable crossover between mainstream sports media and, professional wrestling over the course of the last seemingly 3 years. And this seems to be like the culmination of it. I remember John Cena from when I was like a kid in elementary school. He was on like Fox every Monday or something like that. I don't know. But I never really knew the story. And I still, honestly, don't really know the story and know the comebacks and the yada, 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 and how The Rock is on the bad team.
Oh, yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense. But at the end of the day, the story that they've designed is an electric factory. And that's why they're able to maintain their foot plant in mainstream sports media, right, Jason? Because they're able to design these stories that cater to us, the mainstream sports fans. And when you can get to that crossover point, you have this massive wicked expansion that you've seen with WWE over the last however many years.
And now the question becomes, everybody thought this was sort of a farewell tour for John Cena, and, he'd go through the motions and he might have some fun, runs, but I don't think anybody thought he was actually going to win the world championship. And now I got to wonder if WWE is putting together a scenario where he beats Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania and wins the championship. I just can't imagine that his final year, that his final run in wrestling is going to be him finishing as a heel. That he's going to walk away from. So there's got to be a quick turn back to face somehow here. Maybe The Rock double crosses John Cena or something like that after WrestleMania. There's just something to me that doesn't make sense in this. That John Cena, who has made, the Make-A-Wish stuff with John Cena is legendary. He's granted more wishes, I think, than anybody in the history of Make-A-Wish. His place in society, his place in our cultural zeitgeist, if you will, as such the goody good guy, I can't imagine him walking away from that after 22 years at the top. I can't do it.
Well, again, I don't know the entire history behind it, but I will say this. Look at other sports, right? Not to say that they're exactly comparable, no. I know, but think about when KD went to the Warriors, right? Kind of the same thing. You're going to draw a ton of people as long as KD's on the Warriors. And if you got The Rock and John Cena seemingly on the same team, that's going to pull in a lot of eyeballs. And if you put them both against Cody Rhodes, what are we doing here? It's like the thing wrote itself. So I could see it being a longer term thing. But again, I don't know, how long is long term in wrestling? Are we talking about a thing that could go on for 5 years? Are we talking about a thing that could go on for, 3 months? Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Cena has said this is his last year. So, that, at the end of this year, he's done. And I could see why.
Didn't he also say he wouldn't turn heel?
That's true. It's true. It's very true. It's tough, though. Physically, at his age, even The Rock's age, that's why you're seeing Rock in very limited action in the ring. Just saying. Odds and ends. We'll wrap up the show next. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Monday. Matt Verderam on the show tomorrow. Vlad Louisant will hang out with us as Sam's going to be off for the next couple of days. Couple of reminders. First of all, make sure to check out the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast. Audience keeps getting bigger and bigger. Go and subscribe. All your favorite podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere you get your podcasts. Also on Spotify, you can watch the show there. And now you can watch us every day on YouTube. The show is uploaded there each day as well. All right, without any further delays, time for some odds and ends presented by our friends at Credit Associates. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Our friends from Credit Associates want to help you out with a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high payments, and high interest rates that keep you in debt for decades with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months, and that'll save you thousands of dollars in decades in debt. Find out how much you can save. Call 1-800-747-5362. That's 1-800-747-5362, or just scan the QR code below. Jake Knapp shot a 59 last week at the Cognizant Classic at PGA National, and he didn't even win the tournament. He was 12 under through the first day, and he still didn't win the tournament. Nope. That honor went to who? Joe Highsmith, your winner. 19 under. He shot 64 and 64 on Saturday and Sunday. He wins $1.656 million, Sam Yarnell, and that is exactly how much he earned in his first 3 years on the tour leading up to this event. Congratulations, Joe Highsmith. We barely know you. Your mic is off, Sam. There you go. Turn your mic on.
No kidding. And we barely know any. Yeah. Jason, look through literally everyone up through up to T9. You don't know anybody. Joe Highsmith, Jacob Bridgman, who? JJ Spawn, okay. Max McGreevy, who? Ben Griffin, who? Russell Henley, all right. Michael Kim, all right. Jake Knapp, the guy you mentioned before, with, by the way, one of the all-time choke jobs, 12 under on the first day, and then 3 under through the next 3 rounds combined, including one at even par.
Jordan Spieth. Yeah. All right, Jordan Spieth was T9.
Yeah. I said up to T6. Right. Okay. Yeah. Eric Van Rooyen too at T9. Like there, you get into the better names there. Obviously, Min Woo, Shane Lowry right behind him. But really, at the top of this field was a bunch of guys who you didn't think were going to contend for an event like this. When you've got some premium names on this event. The Florida swing is in full force, though. This is what we are here for. You'll always see. We saw it last year, and we talked about it last year, Jason. This is when the no-names win the tournaments, is on this Florida swing, the Southwest swing. These tournaments are open to the guys who are more familiar with the terrain.
By the way, deserves to be mentioned, Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler have not been extended invitations into the Arnold Palmer Invitational, which a lot of people are kind of up in arms about, because these are those special events, those higher level events. I forget what the actual term for them is, where, you know, the purses are higher and there's guaranteed money and all that stuff. Well, signature. Thank you. Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler, not invited. You can't come to the party.
Yeah.
But hey, man, Joe Highsmith will be there. And that's going to sell lots of tickets.
I'm sure they'll get in based on some sort of.
There's no. It's it. I mean, they're not going to be able to play, because I think
they've sent out all the champions exemptions and stuff.
Not allowed. They're not. They are not invited to play, and there's a lot of people that are up in arms about it. Good news if you watch baseball in the DMV, right, Sam?
Well, yeah, we got some landmark news in terms of DMV baseball this morning. It looks like the entire Masson dispute between the Orioles and Nationals, hello to our friends on Masson, is going to be resolved after this season. Listen, there are a ton of political implications. I'm not going to get into all that. But here's what it means from a baseball standpoint, right? The Orioles not going to have quite as much money as they're accustomed to having. So after having what some people are calling a letdown offseason this year, you could be looking at less revenue going forward, which doesn't spell for signing a ton of key free agents. Now, for the Washington Nationals, it is the complete opposite. Now is the time where the Nationals are saying, all right, 2025 is the end of all this. 2026, we're coming with the bag. They also announced, or it was reported by Forbes this morning, that the Nationals are going to explore ventures into finally getting their stadium sponsored and selling sponsorships on their jerseys as well. Listen, I've been trying to tell people for 2 years now, the Washington Nationals are coming, Jason Page, and if they're going to have money, that team's going to be a lot easier to sell, and that team is going to be a lot more competitive than we're used to them being over the course of the last 3.5, 4 years.
And it all falls into this issue of Major League Baseball with the haves and have-nots, because there are going to be fewer and fewer of those big revenue-generating TV deals regionally for a lot of these baseball teams. This is going to continue to be a problem, and the disparity in terms of the amount of money that teams are going to be able to spend is only going to continue to grow. This is all heading off towards a potential work stoppage in Major League Baseball because of that disparity. That's going to do it for us today. We're out of time. Thank you to Dennis Bernstein. Thank you to Tino Pattigno. Thanks to you, Sam Yarnell. Have a good couple days off. We'll see you back here Thursday. We'll see all of you tomorrow.